I think I'm just going to jump into it.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to another episode of DangerCast. The podcast is officially back. I will be doing these semi-regularly whenever I get a chance. I will have my driver's license back hopefully next week. So be on the lookout for a new series. I'm going to have a driver's license. I can drive wherever I want. So I'm going to drive to people's houses, check out their range, interview them, talk about their knife throwing history and whatnot. And I'll be doing that semi-regularly, driving to different states, going to Sam and Lauren's, Holland, Michigan, going up to this guy's house. And speaking of that, this is Bill Bednarick, the new owner of Tru Balance Knives.
Lots of people know me.
Tru Bal's been around since when?
1949.
1949. It's pretty
so
crazy.
This year, 75th anniversary.
75th anniversary, big year. He's planning on going to Blade Show this year in Atlanta. Hopefully I can go with him. It's pretty exciting. He came up this weekend and
brought some stuff.
Brought a couple things, man.
Brought some old stuff, some new stuff.
Yeah, I did another video showing him and his brother at the Michigan Blade Throwers. I think it was 2 years ago, and we went over a lot of really old collectible stuff. And he brought a bunch of newer, even more rare stuff, I think.
Some of it is.
Yeah, some of the stuff you may have never seen.
Some of it's really rare.
Yeah.
Some of it you may have only seen in Harry's books.
Yeah.
This particular knife is a knife that is in Harry's book. If you have a copy of the green Tuttle book, this is one of the knives.
I recognize that right away.
So is this. This doesn't have a set of scales on it, but this is an original American Hunter. This is also an American Hunter, but this was, I think he called it also the Game Getter. But it's the same era. It's, this one's new manufacture. We just made this one because it's hard to find these to throw. And this one, I didn't have a pattern for this in the archive, so I made a trade for a 76 Dirk for a set I made for a gentleman who was an original Tru Bal customer. He bought these in high school in the 70s because for this pattern to still be around, it was a 1970s knife. You can tell a lot of how old they are by the size of the stone arrowheads. At a certain point, they transitioned from the smaller size to the size that you would see on a knife that I would manufacture or that was made in the, say, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Yeah. So let's give a little bit of history. First of all, Tru Bal is my favorite knife throwing company of all time.
Oldest one in the world.
It's the oldest one in the world. Oldest custom throwing knife maker.
Yep.
It's
I think even production. I don't think there's anything that's in production that's been in production as long as these knives.
Case.
When did they come out with their knife?
Their throwing knives?
Yes.
I think even older. I think. It's
maybe.
Either Case or the German company.
Puma? Boker? Boker was in business longer than that. Boker is, they're pre-World War II.
Anyway, longest custom throwing knife maker for sure. Yeah. But it was owned by Harry McAvoy. Harry McAvoy wrote the book that I taught myself how to throw from, and it just has a deep meaning to me. I just have like a connection to this company. And Harry McAvoy sold it to his son, Stephen McAvoy. Stephen McAvoy eventually sold it to Bobby Branton Knife Works, and then Bill and his brother Jim. Yep, they've been handling everything, and James. Yep, and just want to talk to you about all these different knives you have here, man. Like, talk about how you made this one. This one's a new one, right? Like, this is the bullseye buster that you wanted,
right? Okay, so in the range of knives, this BoAx is the Model 2. This is 1959. They patented that. That was patented. We have the patent documentation. So 1959, and then this knife is the BoAx made into a diamond head. This is called the Bullseye Buster. So we have this one that I made. We have an original that came from Harry at some point. Everything being custom, they're always unique. Like this has the stars arranged like this, but then they have extra stone arrowheads, a star. You never know with Tru Bals exactly what you're going to get. Sometimes they would be certain models had been marked on the guard.
Yeah, each one of these has different markings.
Yes,
right? There's no two knives that are
no,
identical.
There's very
they're
few.
close.
Well, these right here are all marked the same. I've acquired these over the years. I just picked this one up. They're all made the same era. The stamps are the same. The blades are the same. The handle material is the same. The rivet pattern's the same. So they're all the same. Some of these knives, like this one, was probably made in the same time as this, but I would date these as older. These were made in '76 for the bicentennial, and the original first run has 76 in the handle, stamped in the handle. We have one, but we don't have more than one because they're pretty hard to find.
If you guys are watching and you may recognize this knife and this knife, if it looks familiar, it's because Cold Steel knocked these off like 20 years ago, and they're still running with them. They call this one the Perfect Balance, and this one's the Sure Balance.
I think so, yeah.
And
well, they also knocked this one off.
Knocked that one off, of course.
The Model 79 Sport Pro, they knocked this one off, this one, and that one.
And I should say that they came to an agreement later on, that's what I heard.
That's what I've heard
and
from
everything's
Steven.
Cool, but whatever.
Yeah, that's what I heard from Steven, but I mean, they probably didn't pay him for,
all the knives.
Thousands and thousands over 20 years. I mean, how many knife throwers have one of these that's all black with those plastic scales that break off?
Yeah.
How many guys have you seen throw those or these or those? Lots. I mean, so, and if they gave them a fair price, what Steven thought was a fair price at the time, well, then everything's good with them. But I don't think he really got the fair end of the deal because he probably didn't understand the scope of their production.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Cold Steel's a huge company.
Yeah, he probably would have stipulated, hey, give me more. Or cease and desist. Because as I said, this had a patent on it. This knife has a patent. It's expired, but it was patented.
Yeah.
So, I mean, someone spent money for a lawyer to patent that knife, because they found it that valuable. And it was the thing to do back then. These are some new custom stuff.
These are incredible. You will never see any of these anywhere else other than here.
This is stuff. I mean, we try to take the old stuff, like some of these knives that have been around. We get stuff. People contact us. We get stuff from collections. We if I don't have the knife, like I didn't have one of these, so I definitely wanted one of these to kind of bring the designs full circle so that I have that. I also didn't have one of these. Because this knife is so old, even in the templates and drawings that I have of all of these knives, not these, because I made those, but of all of these knives, I don't have one of these. I didn't have one of those. So these are really rare. Paul Mack has one of these, an original. And that's what I used to make this one. So I just basically copied it while he had it in the shop for refurb.
I was just talking to Bill a little while ago, and there's no records of knives. There's 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now 2000s, but they are the foremost experts at identifying knives now because they have so many that they can compare.
Bobby Branton,
scales.
Bobby Branton is
he's very, of course, he's helped out a lot too.
He's very knowledgeable, having owned the company, having the history that he had. John Bailey knew Harry rather well, so he has an insight on it. Rick Lindbergh has an insight on it. Everybody, all of the old school guys, Joe Dara, everybody that was around. Dick Haynes, he's gone, but he threw these. There's pictures of him throwing these in his show. He was very good friends with Harry. So you got to talk to the old guys. You got to beat the bushes and talk to these guys that they were doing this before 2000. They were doing this before 1990.
Yeah.
Because there's so much history that'll be lost if we don't talk to the old guys and girls and say, hey, tell us about your experiences doing the sport that we all love.
Yeah. And then you said identifying marks are scales, rivets, and sheaths,
and
correct?
sheaths. Yes.
Yeah.
The very first sheaths were all made like this. This is what they call a fitted sheath because it's fitted to the blade. Right, so it's fitted like that. It's fitted.
This is more of a universal one.
Yeah,
right?
and this is more of a. Well, this is still handmade, but this is a non-fitted. So this is more universal. Like this knife. This is a universal sheath.
Right.
But this was machine made by somebody. This was a contracted sheath. This one was probably made by Harry or someone Harry contracted in Grand Rapids because it's all riveted together. That one's stitched on a machine. This one's all riveted together. So it's handmade. I make copies of these because it's for something that you want to be period correct but new. It's cool to put the same sheath that would have been on the knife. But yeah, they call this a fold over, a fitted fold over. That's a universal fold over. And then they made these that had the slit like this. And then they started to contract out these from various manufacturers. I actually have a clicker die cutter to make a perfect copy that John Bailey owned that he sold me.
No shit.
Yeah. Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really, it makes a perfect copy. So
yeah, you want to talk about these? Like, is this new models that you're going to be?
Well, this is kind of
I love that design.
Yeah, this is kind of like, I don't know if anybody has seen the camp cutter that we did. We had a few. I think we had one at DangerFest, and then I made another one for a person. But this is kind of along that same lines. It starts out with an existing Tru Bal blank, but then it's reground because this knife is ground out of a Bowie axe. You can see how it is. The Bowie axe is a Bowie. This is a diamond head, but the clip lines up. The difference is they just took that off.
Took the belly out.
They just took the belly off. So and then took this part off too. So they made it out of that knife. So in that fashion, I do that with this. There's other stuff that was made. This is made from a dirk, right? So this knife and this knife were the same blanks. Now this is a real old one. It's more narrow. This is a later manufacture. It's a little wider, but that is the same base knife, as you can see, where the difference is in it. And that's one of the things that Harry he would make a design and then he would make a modification to the design because he maybe liked it a little bit better, tweaking it. As a lot of knife makers do that. This is also started out as a dirk, and this is like a good half spin underhand. It's supposed to be live edge.
I like that one too.
It's supposed to be live edge for cutting. The camp cutter is live edge because it's more of a camp knife, utility knife necessarily than a throwing knife. It's a utility knife that can be thrown.
Right.
The initial idea of this knife, this knife, this knife, and this knife were all that they were utility knives that could be thrown. This one the same way. This was sharpened. This was live edge when it was purchased, or very close. And that was kind of, when you read the old documentation, he addresses that like this knife was made to be thrown, as we all call it, military half spin. Right. That's because it was sharp. And then you have this handle. We're going to try it tonight. See how it throws no.
By the way, while you're doing that, show the proper grip for military half spin. A lot of people get it wrong. Now, see that? His fingers are away from the edge. That is a proper military grip because it was made in a way that you could do it without hurting yourself throwing a sharp knife.
Just take a
look. If you see anybody doing it different, that is the way you're supposed to throw a military half spin.
And a lot of distance control, because guys that throw military half spin, Joe Dara is a great example. That guy could throw this knife from here to that target,
anywhere,
6 meters, 7 meters.
Yeah.
And all he does is change his grip on the knife, and I think his thumb does a lot of retardation on the throw. It creates the anti-spin in this type of particular throw. But yeah, that's so you can throw that knife like that. But Harry intended this knife to be a handle thrower. This knife is This knife is razor sharp.
Yeah, there's several models I believe that were designed
in his documentation. He refers to this, and in his videotape, which is very hard to find, he refers to this as.
Show a little close up of that scale though. This one's super custom. There's only one in the world.
Yeah,
it's got brass What would you call that?
A escutcheon plate.
Okay, that's so cool.
You know, instead of putting rivets on there, I just headed them. I just headed the regular pins on top of here because, you know, I mean,
it looks awesome, man.
It was an example of what I could do up to this point personally for craftsmanship. You know, I was trying to see if I could do all of these things.
Okay, that kind of segues into the next thing I want to talk about. As far as a business, what do you offer? How can people reach you? Okay. How much do things cost? Can you sharpen every knife? Whatever.
It's
customizable, right?
Yeah, it's customizable. Some knives I wouldn't order sharp. I probably wouldn't order this sharp. I've made dirks that are sharp, but they're ground
all the way. Yeah,
they're ground all the way back to here, and they're double edged. And I can make them razor sharp. You can cut a beer can in half. In fact, I've got video, and some people have seen it of me cutting with different throwing knives because they're that sharp. Basically, the best way to get a hold of me is go to TruBal.com, you know, TruBalKnives.com, and my contact information's on there. Facebook is a little sketchy for Messenger. Sometimes I don't get it. Sometimes I do. Instagram, I usually can get those messages. I have no problem.
And what is your handle on Instagram?
It's Tru Balance Knives, or my name.
Tru Balance Knives, Bill Bednarick. Okay.
Yep. Same as on Facebook.
I'll put that in the on the screen.
You know, so I mean, if you hit me up on either of those I get instant. You know, I get instant alerts if I get a message on those platforms. That's the easiest way. Call me, say this is what I want. The website has base pricing.
Does it?
Yes. The base pricing for that knife with fiber scales is $115, right? But if you want micarta, if you want this, if you want G10, that's G10. You know, we've transitioned from the traditional rivets to these. These are higher tensile. These are stainless steel. We've tested these, and we think that if Harry had these to use in the original knives, he would have used these.
Because, we'll talk more about that knife here in a moment.
You know, but you know, you can get it made like this. You can get it made like it looks like that. You know, you can get it made.
How many different models do you offer at the moment?
Can
you make anything?
I can make basically anything that was in the archive. If you have one of something and you wanted to throw it in competition, so you wanted 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, and you wanted to send it, like we do refurbs, right? So it starts out at $50. If you've got a knife and you want this knife cleaned up, well, it's probably going to take more than $50 worth of work to clean this up. It needs scales. It's got some pitting in it, you know, but we could clean it up, you know, and it would look like, well, it would look like this, right? I mean, I can take this knife and make it look like that if you want me to. But so we offer refurbs. You know, if you've got something you want to know what it's worth, we can give you a kind of an idea. It's kind of its market forces. You know, some people think because something's really old that it's worth more. For instance, this knife. This knife is one of the oldest Bowie axes on this table. In fact, it is the oldest Bowie axe. Oh. Yeah, because this knife, it's not as old as this knife. This knife, if this knife had this stone arrowhead on it, it would be older. This was the older mark. This knife also has the smaller one. So you can tell that it was made when this stamp was being used by the company. Now, I don't know when the stamp was lost or broken, but at some point, this is the stamp that is used, because that's the same stamp that I use on mine, that I stamped, that Harry stamped in the 70s, that Steven stamped when he was active, and Bobby stamped.
What he's talking about is the arrowhead here. Yeah. This is BoAx on one side. And some of them say Tru Bal on the other, but it does right there.
Yeah. Yep. But if you look at this, that is smaller than the one on that one. See, these are both small.
Yep.
Whereas the larger stone arrowhead is newer.
So do you have any of the original stamps, or did you have to have stamps remade?
I have all of the original stamps except for the smaller stone arrowhead stamp. So I have this stamp, I have that stamp, I have the stars, I have the newest stone arrowhead stamp, because like this knife, I stamped all of this myself.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks great.
You
man.
know,
Yeah.
so I have the BoAx stamp, I have the Tru Bal stamp, the star stamps, the stone arrowhead stamps. You know, we have that. That was that in the design. The design bin. It's like literally a bin of hand-drawn designs, templates, things that Harry wrote down, the pricing. I have patterns for all of the classic Bowies.
That's awesome.
You know, I have patterns for things people have never seen unless they order them. I have patterns for knives that he made for Penn Jillette, because Penn Jillette was a professional juggler and a knife thrower. So Harry made him juggler's knives.
Nice.
He also made some for Larry
Suzeki?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce it.
It's something like that.
It's like that. You know, old school guy. You know, old school professional. He was a professional knife thrower.
Yeah, he's on TV and everything.
Yeah, professional knife thrower. He made some stuff. He made stuff for him. I mean, at one time, Harry made the throwing knives for everybody. He made a Model 1 for Neil Armstrong. It went up on eBay, and it went for crazy money.
Did it?
Yeah, because it had Providence. I mean, there was pictures of Neil Armstrong holding it, throwing it with his kids.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
It's really, it was a sick piece. I mean,
that's awesome.
For a Tru Bal collector. But, you know, I've taken different things and kind of just, you know, thinned them down, you know, gives them a little bit different balance. Doesn't really change the knife fundamentally.
A lot of these knives are similar.
Yes.
Like, you know, this one was made from the BoAx, but the subtle changes really make a difference when you're throwing them, especially.
Yes.
So some of them may look similar, but they're very different.
Yes.
Like all the handle scales are basically the same.
Well, like this knife. This knife is basically, if you look at it, the back edge of it is almost the same.
Yeah.
But then you look at, you know, then it's got that wider belly. Well, that, you know,
that changes it drastically.
Yeah, I mean, for a knife that you're throwing, you know, this one being sharp and this one was sharp, you would normally have to throw this military half spin.
Yeah.
You know, but if you were throwing it by the handle or you were using it as a field knife, because a lot of these were designed to be field knives.
That'd be a decent skinner.
Oh, it'd be a good skinner. Yeah. I mean, it's got enough convex blade that, I mean, it would be good for cutting carrots. I mean,
a lot of them are great for everything. Like the BoAx. I think that's damn near perfect for camping and whatever.
It's a knife that's made to be thrown, but also to be used. You know, it's a Bowie.
I think this is the most iconic knife out of all of the Tru Bals, but there's so many that I don't know. I love
every time you turn around, there's something new that Harry made, either as a prototype and maybe he made it for somebody. And we've never heard of that person, but it comes up. It just pops up. You know,
you guys find a lot of stuff on eBay, right?
I find some stuff on eBay, but a lot of times the people on eBay they misrepresent things. Everybody that's dealt with eBay sellers knows that they misrepresent everything. If they think it was old, it was in Vietnam, or it was in the Revolutionary War, or it was in the Civil War.
There's a lot of speculation.
There's a lot of speculation,
Vietnam, right? Yeah.
You know. Unless you have a picture of a person in country with the knife, it's not
hearsay.
It's hearsay.
Cool stories.
Yeah, it's cool stories. You know what they say? And this is what they say. All collectors say that. Buy the art, don't buy the story. Buy the knife, don't buy the story. Right?
Okay.
So if you like the knife and the price is right and you like it and it's cool, then buy it. But don't believe the story, because people do that with all kinds of things.
Because there was how many knives?
Oh, thousands. Thousands.
You know,
thousands of Bowie axes. See, the reason that the Bowie axe, people think that it may have been in Vietnam, because during Vietnam, that knife was listed in the Randall Knives catalog. Bo Randall of Randall Knives and Harry McAvoy were really good friends. In fact, Bo Randall actually pitched the Bowie axe and the Bolo Bowie, which is a Bowie axe that's this long, as survival knives for NASA during the Gemini program. Because they were looking for something, and him being down there in Florida, they came to him and he said, well, I've got just what you need for a survival knife. And it was the Bowie axe. And so then they were like, we want something more like a machete. So then the Bolo Bowie came out. Yeah. They lengthened it out so that it's a Bowie axe that's longer. It's about this long.
Short sword.
Yep, and they're pretty rare. You know, there's you know, there's not any on this table. I have some original blanks. I haven't completed them yet.
He didn't bring everything.
I didn't bring everything. But yeah, so those are actually shown in some of the Randall Knife Collectors books. That because there was 4. There was 2 big ones, 2 low Bowies, and there were 2 BoAx size. And 2 of them are in collector's hands somewhere, and 2 of them are in the Randall Knives Museum in Florida. So if you go to the Randall Knives Museum, you'll see Tru Bals.
I've seen pictures. Yeah.
Right? You'll see Tru Bals in there, one-of-a-kinds, or something that, because they collaborated a lot. Bo Randall was an avid knife thrower. He made some sick stuff. Cue balls with spikes, all kinds of weird throwing weapons, because he was a knife thrower and a knife maker.
Yeah,
he was making stuff he wanted to throw. So, you know, to look at Randall Knife's catalogs now, you don't see the wild assortment of things that have come out of Randall Knives over the years. You know, but they make a great knife.
Oh, but, excellent! Yeah.
You know, but their history, because they were in the catalog, guys that didn't have the time or money, you know, time to wait or the money to purchase a Randall, would purchase either one of these, this was listed, or one of these. So, you know, there are probably knives that were in Vietnam. These are listed, this knife and this knife are listed in the U.S. military knives of the Vietnam conflict, 1960 to 71, I believe it is. It's in the very back of the book, and they're listed amongst some of the other private purchase knives. You know, but they're in the book because people bought them, people carried them, people came back. Stephen McAvoy served in the Vietnam War. He carried a custom classic Bowie that his father made while he was in country.
That's awesome.
To have that knife would be amazing.
Yeah.
I think I know who's got it.
Really?
Well,
ooh.
There's a few people that have all the classic Bowies, or they have a few classic Bowies, but then they pop up because no one really knows how many you made.
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to say. I've made a few classic Bowies, but I mark mine so that people know that they're now, not then.
Right.
You know, I make some differences in the knife just to make sure that people...
that's also good that you know that there was no history, so now there can be, so you definitely know I made this then.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I don't stamp my initials on everything, but I make them a certain way. You can tell the difference between this original and this original.
Correct.
I made this original. This is an original.
Yeah.
Right? This is an original now. That was an original then. They're the same knife. They're made from the same pattern, out of the same stock.
So this is the 75th anniversary this year.
Yep.
Go check him out at Blade Show.
Yep.
Let's talk about this knife then.
Okay. So this is in the design archive.
I love that knife, dude.
Listed as a Western style Bowie. It's actually drawn on this, hang fire, this iconic brown wrapping paper. So it's drawn on there, a handwritten drawing. And there was one made. And Harry made it in 1992 for his son Stephen for Christmas. Because I know what collection it's in. That is the only other one, and I have a third. Those are the only 3 of that pattern. That was the last knife that he made before he passed away in 1993. I would venture that was probably the last one because he gave it to his son for Christmas. You know, and I'm not sure the exact date. I'd have to look it up exactly when. But if a person passes away the next year, I don't think they were doing a lot of knives.
Sure.
He wasn't probably doing a lot of production at that time. But yeah, that knife is probably the newest design that came from Harry McAvoy, but no one has. There's one. So we're bringing this back for the 75th anniversary to allow people to have something that no matter how good of a collector you are, you don't have one of these.
Yeah. Because
he didn't make any. He made one.
What are you charging for these?
I haven't decided because we're basically going to make them full custom, whereas we're going to figure out what options we're going to offer. You know, say G10, modernized. They're going to be serial numbered. We're only probably doing 100 of them.
Wow. Okay.
Right? We're doing 100. We would only do 75, but some people want certain serial numbers.
Right.
you know.
Is this going to be available at Blade Show?
We're going to do pre-orders at Blade Show.
Okay, awesome.
We're going to have some examples. That one's made out of some slightly thinner stock.
I love the thinner stuff.
Yeah.
It's good.
You know, and if we bring it out in a production model, we'll probably go with the thinner stock.
I think it's perfect.
You know, because the knives out of the 3/16, so the same as the BoAx, if we do a high grind on it, it's almost a live edge knife at that point. You know, and so there's a good point to have a knife like that. But if you wanted to throw a knife in competition, generally a bigger knife, it benefits from being lighter.
I agree.
This knife, for instance, let's talk about this one.
Okay, just for a moment though, the reason why Tru Bal has always been my favorite knife company, it's just because of the history, and then they look like knives.
Right.
And a lot of knives now, you know, throwing knives, there's a lot of knives that, especially the no spin stuff, it doesn't really look like a knife anymore.
Yes.
And I started off as a rotational thrower, so these knives will always have a very special place in my heart. Okay, let's talk about this knife here.
Now let's talk about this. So basically what we have here
excited
is we have a BoAx, but we have a thinner BoAx. And, you know, and it's just, it's, you know, this is 3/16, so this is thicker. This is going to weigh more. These are all 3/16. So this is a lighter.
It's about 5/32 thick.
Yeah, it's 5/32. It's actually the exact same thickness as this.
Oh, okay.
A lot of Harry's designs that were wider, to get the right feel, he would make them out of thinner stock. If he made something really wide, sometimes he made it out of 1/8" stock.
Yeah.
Because it already had, because of the width, it had
Yeah.
weight. You didn't want it to be, you wouldn't want to throw something that was this wide out of 3/16. It'd be like throwing a cleaver. You'd never throw it in competition. So, you know, this being said, this one, we may come out with the production version in this same stock, this 5/32, or whatever the metric equivalent is. It's, you know, it makes the knife not too heavy. And even if you had a sharpened one, this will hold a great edge. I mean, kitchen knives aren't thick.
No.
You know,
very
thin. So yeah, we're super excited about this. We've been playing with this for most of last year, but yeah, this one is basically a BoAx.
So we don't have a name for this yet.
Nope,
we don't have a name for this. Nope. But I asked Bill to make this for me because my favorite knife of all time is the Bullseye Seeker. This is my favorite knife. I've done a lot of things with these, won world championships with them, won multiple fast draw competitions, and this is just, I love these, and Bill had passed away a couple years ago, and I would like to hang these up because I don't want to damage the handles, and they just mean a lot to me. So what I had asked, well, I had actually reached out to Scott, which is Bill's predecessor, and he's still making knives, and I asked him, hey, are you still going to be making the Bullseye Seeker? Because if not, I would like to either use that design or do something similar, you know, whatever. And he said that he was still going to be making them. So I said, okay, I'll leave it alone. Right. And I went to Bill and I said, hey, can you basically make me the same knife?
But not.
But not.
Can you make a Tru Bal that feels like
this is a Tru Bal. You can tell by the scales, the tapered, the handle scales, you know, everything, the rivets, and even the shape. It still looks like a Tru Bal. But if you put these side by side, same length, similar blade profile, same thickness, same length of scales. They're very similar. This one's just 30 grams heavier than this one. And if we end up putting these into production or whatever, I think we'd lighten them up just a little bit more. Yep. But other than that,
well, we might take that center rivet out. I
also think
that would take some weight off.
I also think maybe leather.
Well, we have done leather. We don't. Harry did leather for strict mountain man competitions. Bobby did some leather. I don't know if Steven did. I suspect he did, but we've done several sets.
I saw the ones that you did, the BoAxes from my buddy up here, and they came out phenomenal. Yep. He was super happy with them.
There's one in there's one in Canada, there's 3 in Texas, and there's 3 in Indiana.
Yeah, so
that we've made. But Harry made a lot. He's in the design. He's got where he specifies mountain man with sole leather, and everybody is familiar with the sole leather, and it holds up well.
Very well. It's very strong. Unless you hit it with another knife, you're not really going to damage it too much. Yep. But this is kind of a tribute and an honor to Bill Page. Miss him dearly, and it's about as close as you can get without it being the same knife. And Bill, you did an amazing job, dude. Just when you showed me the picture And I could already tell. And I've thrown these knives a little while ago, side by side. They throw almost identical. So this is going to be my new fast draw knife. Whether or not it's going to be available to the public, we don't know yet. We still have to decide on a name, whatnot. But I'm blown away, dude. Thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it.
But that's really, in Tru Bal's history, there have been, like, for instance, the Pendulette knife, and knives that he made specifically for people. Almar, famous knife maker, designer. People would come to Harry and say, I want this, and he would make it. That's why there's so many different knives.
Yeah.
Either he made it for him, or he made it because, oh, what if we did this? Or someone said, hey, what if you did that? So that's why, to continue that tradition of, always tweaking the knives, always trying to, keep them utilitarian, yet keep the sport aspect of the throwing in it. But also to keep the old school from the muzzleloader days, from some of that old traditional stuff where the knives were used. You had to use the knife in a competition and then use it in throwing competition. I'm sure you've heard that. In strict muzzleloading where they wear regalia, in the beginning, and it depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
Where you're at, the knife has to be functional.
Right.
It can't just be a knife-shaped object. You have to actually process firewood, do this, do that. You have to prove it works. So that's a very interesting thing. He has always advocated live cutting, so have I. I really like.
Yeah.
I like to cut beer cans.
A knife is a knife.
Because it's really hard to cut them, and this knife will do it. This knife will.
That thing is so fucking sharp.
Yes, and it's the same,
like a katana.
It's the same steel as all of these. It's all the same.
And what steel do you guys use?
Spring steel, 1050 spring steel, which the cold steel knockoffs are also 1050 spring steel.
Yeah, 1055, I believe.
Yeah, but what's 5 points of carbon?
I know.
No one cares. 5 points of carbon. It could be 1060 then, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I mean, these knives all came sharp. This knife is designed to be sharp. This knife could be either, but it's actually supposed to be sharp. This knife was sharp. When I got it, it was sharp. It's still a little bit sharp. I could get it sharper. I'm not going to. This knife, the guy I purchased this from said when he got it from Harry, it was razor sharp.
That thing's beat.
Yeah,
it's been beat. It's so cool though.
But he threw it when he bought it when he was in high school.
Oh, really?
In the 70s.
Wow.
Like early 70s.
Yeah.
And he didn't say when in high school because he didn't. I mean, he did like the set of dirks that I made him. He said those were phenomenal. He was super happy with them.
That's awesome.
Because he wanted to get back into throwing. Because, at any age you can throw a knife.
Yes.
You don't have to be young. You don't have to be a man. You can be a girl. You can be young. I mean, as long as you have a knife that's suited for your physical stature and strength, you can throw it.
Yep.
And as you have said, lighter knives do tend to throw better.
I think so.
For a lot of people. I mean, they have to have enough weight, but they don't have to be so heavy.
Well, there for a little while, everybody started getting to be a little too heavy, in my opinion.
Yes.
Everything started to get real thick.
Yes.
And I kind of disagree. And everything's kind of moving back the other way now. It's interesting to see how the knife throwing evolutions is works.
Yes. Well, and there's a formula. There's actually, in the books,
a ratio.
Harry puts a ratio out. It's an ounce to an ounce and a half per inch.
Per inch. Yeah.
And so if you have a 16-inch knife, you have a 16-ounce thing that you have to throw however many times through all your sets. And if you don't practice all of your sets, it can be physically tiring.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, a heavier knife does work sometimes better if there's crosswind. And depending on your style, some people do favor a heavier knife.
Yep.
But across the board, if you start out with something lighter, and you can throw a slightly faster throw that you don't use so much, muscle. You don't have to use so much muscle. You can still throw a fast throw, but you don't have to really, really, really work to throw it fast. Yep. Then you can get a flatter trajectory, and you can shorten up your distances depending on whether you're throwing feet or meters. It can help you so that you have more consistency. Because when you start to get back to 7, 8, 23 feet, whatever it is, you need to have stability. You need to have stability.
Yeah.
And, a fast knife, even a lighter fast knife will buck the wind.
Wind is tough.
To a degree.
When you're outside, it's tough. If you have a crosswind, it's not good.
And that's why a lot of heavier knives, they do good in heavy wind, but if you tire yourself out throwing them, you're not going to throw well at all.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Okay, man. I think the only thing I only have one more question, man. I don't want to make this video too long. Did anybody ever figure out what this was?
It's just a choil. It's a choil.
Is it really for choking up?
It's a choil.
Okay.
Like, if you look at a traditional Bowie knife, okay, say I made this one in the Sheaths style.
Oh yeah, look at this. This is wild.
This is,
you gotta show a close up of that.
Yeah, this is basically this is like a 1840s, 1830s Sheffield style coffin handled Bowie knife, right? As something that you would get at the trading post, you know, or wherever.
Old school Arkansas toothpick.
Well, these didn't have they didn't have a choil. They came right up like a kitchen knife, right? They didn't have a choil, whereas this has a choil. It's kind of like a spot where the blade transition stops.
It's for fine cutting, feathering.
Yeah, you know,
like
well,
that.
and it's, you know, they say it's for sharpening. There's a lot of reasons. It's a design.
Yeah,
it's really.
It definitely sets another knives apart.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's very different.
It's just kind of like a design feature. I mean, it gives you a spot to stop your grind. You don't have to worry about, you know, like on a knife, well, like these. This knife has to stop at a certain point. If you ground it all the way past to the choil, if there was a bump down here, well, then you don't have to worry about how your plunge lines look. So that's one of the reasons that people do that in a design, because you don't have to worry about where your plunges are.
Because plunge lines are tough, right?
Yeah, plunge lines can be tough, especially in a production environment. You know, and even in a custom knife maker. Whereas this one, I brought it back and did plunge lines, right? Because I was looking for a certain look, and I wanted to lighten up the knife because I wanted it to be kind of like this.
Yeah,
kind of just
see what the
thicker.
Well, it's nice being a knife maker, right? You can just try shit.
Well, yeah, and then, you know, and that's how this knife came apart. You know, that's how this knife became made. That's how this knife. I mean, that's how this knife. I mean, he started out with something. If you look at his old books, there's pictures of knives that you probably have never seen in real life or anybody ever throw, because he maybe only made a few.
Yeah.
He made quite a few of these. These were listed in the catalog. Mm-hmm. These were like 54 or 57.
Yeah.
He designed this.
God, you need to make a poster to sell.
Yeah,
that has all the models. There's so many models.
Yes, there's a big. I have a big proof copy of a catalog, and I'd have to look at the date exactly. It's from, I want to say, the 80s.
No shit.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of discontinued models and everything on it. It's
oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But I need a good high res picture of it. But there's some old catalogs that show this knife, the Model 1, which we don't have a Model 1 on the table, and the BoAx, because the Model 1 was the Model 1. That's the Model 2. And then there was this one. And this isn't considered a Model 3. It didn't have a number designation. It was called American Hunter.
And don't you have a Model 1 that's a one-off that has the hole in the middle of the blade?
We have several of those. The original Model 1s, the stock that they were made from had holes in them.
That was the stock. It wasn't a design.
Stock. It was a stock. Because it was made from spring stock.
Oh, okay. It looks cool, though.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's a locator hole for the center of a spring stack.
Oh, okay.
Right. That's what it is. That's what
like
that
leaf
hole
springs?
is. Yeah, like leaf springs. Because a leaf spring being, say you had a leaf spring that was the right thickness and it was this long, you might make something else. Like these never had holes in them. I mean, there are a few. There's like maybe one. I've seen pictures of maybe one that have a hole in it. And I've seen maybe one that has a hole in this. If you made it from the center of the spring, you would have a hole in the center of it. It's if you had enough on either end to make one of these, then you could make 3 knives out of it. Those never had holes in them. So if you made, a Model 1 out of the center and made a Model American Hunter out of this end and a BoAx out of that end, then you made 3 knives out of a piece of spring stock. And that's the steel. The original steel was spring stock. He made it out of leaf spring stock, which is great steel. It's spring tempered. You won't ever break it. I mean, think of how much beating a spring gets. Yeah. It's just, but yeah, that's why you'll see certain ones. The really old ones had holes in them, in the Model 1s. These never had holes. BoAxes never had holes.
Okay.
But, I've got one picture of this knife with a hole in it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that style, that that pattern with a hole in it. So yeah,
hell yeah, man.
that's Tru Bal in a nutshell, kind of.
Anything else you want to add?
No.
Thanks so much, dude, for coming out and fucking showing
get a
your
hold of us
collection.
if there's something that if there's something that you've seen Tru Bal wise. If you even have a picture of a Tru Bal, that you want,
send it in. Yeah, we'd love to see your collection if you have them. And I know I'm gonna post this on YouTube, and I get a lot of comments on YouTube and Reddit of people that kind of just peruse stuff and like, hey, I have one of those.
Yeah, I mean, if you only have one and you don't want to throw it, take a good tracing of it. Measure the thickness. Contact us. We'll make you one. We'll make you a brand new one you can throw, and that one that maybe you inherited from your grandfather or great grandfather. You don't have to worry about jeopardizing a family.
That's exactly why we made
family
this.
heirloom. That's basically what that.
I'm retiring this knife so I can throw this from now on because these knives mean so much to me. So
well, thanks again, dude. And it's like this knife. I mean, this knife we don't have to throw. I mean, it's the same as this.
Yeah, it's identical.
Yeah, basically, it's made from the same pattern. It's identical. I mean, they're all handmade, so they're slightly different. I could match this if I needed a set of 3 of these. It's not any big deal to match a set of knives. You make them as a set.
Yeah.
So if a person says, hey, I've got a Tru Bal and I want to throw it in a competition, I need 2 more, the best thing to do is to take that knife and contact me and either send it to me and I can refurb it.
That's the best way.
Right. And I can refurb it, especially if it needs scales. If it needs scales, it's really easy to make a copy of it. Because I can just lay it on the steel and trace it. If it has scales and you want to keep it, that's fine. I made this one from a knife that all we did was refurb. We did not pull the original scales off. We did not pull the original rivets off. That knife is identical to the way it came out of the shop whenever it came out of the shop. And, if a person wanted to throw one, we'd make them one.
Oh, yeah.
Because that way you can throw a knife that's not, if you paid good money for it because you wanted it in your collection because you've never seen one or you had one and you sold it, whatever the case may be, why it's that valuable that you want to collect it. You don't necessarily want to not have one to throw. We can make you one. Just contact us.
Awesome.
And I mean, like I said, the BoAx base model starts at $115, and that's, fiber scales, standard rivets, not sharp. If you want it sharp, I have a loose list of what I charge more for. Usually a sharpened BoAx with micarta. If you catch me at a show or a throw,
a little cheaper then.
It's a little cheaper. If you need shipping, well then I ship priority, so throw another $20 on it. But you're looking at you'd look at like a $140 for that with no sheath. But that's a razor sharp knife. Right.
That's a damn good deal, man. I mean,
with micarta or G10, it's basically an indestructible throwing knife that's sharp. Yeah. If you didn't want it sharp, well, then you're right back down to that.
It's even more indestructible.
Then you're down to that $115 price, right? Yeah. Plus the shipping. If you want it sharp, I usually do $20 more for sharp, and I do for fancy scale material. I do $20 more because it costs more. I have a bunch of the fiber, and I prefer the G10 or the micarta for something that I'm going to subject to a lot of use and abuse.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
A fast draw knife. I mean, if you can abide by it in the competition you're in, I prefer G10. Leather is good. It's pretty forgiving, but if you really beat them up, then you're going to have to put.
Yeah, I don't recommend leather for newer throwers.
No.
These have lasted me a long time.
Yeah.
Just because of.
Yeah. But if you hit them against something sharp, you're going to ruin that.
Oh, it's going to be
they're always going to have that spot that catches your finger. You're going to hate it. You're going to be like, what do I do? Super glue it all down is what you do. Yeah. Super glue it down and then sand it off. Yeah. And at that point, if you super glued leather together, you've now made basically G10. Yeah. Sort of. So anyway.
All right, man. Thanks for all the information. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been another episode of the DangerCast. Stay tuned for the next one. Peace.